Welcome to the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. After learning a ton about kidney stones and helping people prevent stones at the University of Chicago, I was fed up with all the terrible advice people were finding online. So I decided to do something about it. The Kidney Dietitian was born. This podcast is for people who want to learn what actually works to prevent kidney stones and still enjoy life, eating, and their favorite foods. Let's dive in. Hello and welcome to the 65th episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. I'm your host, registered dietitian and kidney stone expert, Melanie Betts. And today we have a listener question from Donna. So let's listen in.
Hi, Melanie. Thanks for your podcast. I have a question about the 24-hour urine test. So I've had one about a year ago following a gigantic kidney stone episode with surgical removal. But now I'm wondering, I feel like I'm going to pee to meet the test when this time comes around, period. Like on my normal days, sometimes I do great and drink all the water I'm supposed to, and sometimes I don't. I'm afraid that when it comes to doing the test that 24-hour period, I'm going to be doing better than I usually do on the amount of water I drink and the amount of pee I put out, period. Anyways, wondered if you could give any guidelines on how to take the most accurate 24-hour urine test. Thank you so much.
So thank you, Donna, so much for that wonderful question. And this is something that people, I think, get anxious about a lot is like, oh man, like this, there's so much weight on this 24-hour urine test, which is true. It's very, very important. But people get so nervous, like, oh, is this going to be a good day? Is this a normal day, right? Like, what can I do? And my best advice to you, and it's probably not the best advice, is to just try to be as normal as possible on the day that you collect your urine compared to your sort of typical life, right? And this comes to both when we are thinking about how much water and fluid that you're drinking, as well as what you're eating, right? Which I know can be really, really, really hard for two reasons. One, on the day that you do your urine collection, you're likely at home. Typically, people will do it on a weekend or even take a day off work where you can be home, which is understandable because you don't want to have to be lugging that jug of pee around with you all day. So you may be at home, which may very much impact both your eating and drinking habits compared to when you're out and about. And I think the other aspect of what's going on is that it is really, really hard to not, what we sometimes say, study for the test, right? Like when you know that your doctor or dietitian is going to be looking at your urine test, it's really hard to not be good, quote, air quotes here, because you want to like have good results and you want it to look great, but know that unless it accurately reflects what you typically do to the closest of your ability, we can't help you to the best of our ability, right? It's kind of like lying to your dietitian, right? Like if you say, oh no, like I never have dessert, like A, we know you're lying, but B, like that means that we can't help you, right? Like we're not here to judge you. We are here to help you. We've seen everything, I promise. So just trying to be as realistic and normal as possible on the day that you collect your urine sample is going to give you the best plan of action. Now, all of that being said, your doctor or dietitian knows that things are different day to day, right? Like that is really, really important when it comes to me as a healthcare professional when I'm interpreting that data, right? Like I know that things vary day to day. Obviously, we eat very, very differently. Some days I'm better with water and some days I'm not so great, right? Like that's just human nature. And so we know that when we're interpreting those results, right? And we also know that likely your results are going to be better on this day than others. Like this is a phenomenon that's actually shown to be true. Like people, when they write down everything they eat, for example, we know that people are going to eat, quote, better, whatever that means, than if they don't write down what they eat, just because you know that you're going to have to show it to your dietitian or whatever. So we know that this is actually true. And your physician, whether it's a doctor or a dietitian, should be taking this into account if they're well versed in interpreting urine tests and data. They should know that this is the case, and just again take that into consideration when they are interpreting that test. Now, Donna, you seemed specifically concerned about how much water you're going to be drinking on this test day and if that's going to sway the results. And I just wanted to shed a little bit of light on that piece of it. So if you do feel that you can eat normally that day, but it's the fluid change in that day that you're concerned about, know that that can easily be sort of taken into consideration when you're looking at the results. So when we look at urine tests, there's sort of two different things, right? So the first thing is going to be sort of absolute amounts of stuff in your urine. So I'm going to be looking at the absolute amount of calcium in your urine and the absolute amount of oxalate and uric acid and citrate. And it doesn't matter how much you drink, right? If there's going to be the same amount of calcium in your urine if you drink 1 liter or 6 liters, like that doesn't change. The only numbers on that test that are going to change based on that, on how much fluid you drink, is obviously urine volume. Obviously, that's going to be directly impacted with how much you drink, but also those supersaturation numbers. So for people that aren't familiar with 24-hour urine tests, supersaturation numbers are essentially a risk of you forming that stone. So it takes all of the information that 24-hour urine test collects and puts it into a very fancy equation that is basically a representation of your risk of forming, say, a calcium oxalate stone, a calcium phosphate stone, or a uric acid stone. On most, like if you get a Litholink 24-hour urine test, and most other 24-hour urine test companies will give you this like essential risk of forming that type of stone. And certainly your urine volume is going to be the biggest thing that impacts all of those supersaturations. And so, if you do happen to drink a ton of extra fluid on your urine test day, those supersaturation numbers will be artificially low. But that being said, we still can look at, again, that calcium and that oxalate and the protein that you're eating and the sodium that you're eating. The amount of fluid that you consume isn't going to impact those numbers. So we still are going to get great information. And if you happen, if you realize on the day of your test, you're like, man, I'm peeing a whole lot more than normal. Like this is not normal. This is going to blow the test. It is okay. Just make sure to tell your doctor that. That's super helpful information for us if we're looking at that test. And in fact, when I look at 24-hour urine tests for students in Kidney Stone Nutrition School, I have questions where I ask like, hey, like, was this a normal day? Were you sweating more than normal? Were you drinking more than normal? Were you eating more or less salt than normal, right? Because these are just kind of a good thing for me to know, right? Did you just get home from vacation, or did you have a batch of fresh sausage that your neighbor gave you, right? Like that my Michigan country roots were showing there, when people have their deer made into sausage. But these are really useful things for us to know when we're interpreting that test. We always know, again, that things are going to change quite a bit from day to day. But if you have an anomaly that would help shed some light onto what's going on with the day that you collected that test, that is super helpful. Another thing that you can do, and actually the University of Chicago requires that all patients who come to the Stone Clinic to work with one of their physicians have at least 2 24-hour urine tests. I believe that they actually used to require 3. Don't quote me on that, but at least 2 24-hour urine tests for exactly this reason, because we know that things change, right? That's okay. That's literally how humans are, but that's just part of the study, the test interpretation, if you will. So hopefully, Donna, that helps sort of calm your anxiety, slight anxiety or worries about doing the test. It's completely okay if you happen to drink a whole lot more water or a whole lot less water on that day. It's probably less likely, but if you happen to drink a whole lot more water, it's totally fine. Just let your doctor or dietitian know, and they can absolutely take that into account when interpreting those test results. So hopefully that helps. Good luck with the test. I'm sure it will shed a ton of light on why you are forming stones, so you can come up with an effective, targeted prevention plan for you. And with that, I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. As always, if you have a question that you would like me to answer on the podcast, I would absolutely love to hear from you. So thank you, Donna, so much for for calling in, if you will. It's not really a call. You just go to a website. But if you just go to kidneystonepodcast.com, it's super easy. You just push a button and you record your question. And then there's a chance that it will get answered on the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast. And as I always say, I love doing listener question episodes the most because I know that I'm answering questions that you have and that I know that it's helping people out there. So please, please, please don't hesitate to record a question if you have anything that you want to ask. So again, I will close this episode of the Eat Away Kidney Stones podcast, and I look forward to seeing you next Wednesday. Thank you for listening to today's episode. For more help with kidney stones, check out my website, www.thekidneydietitian.org. For more personalized help from me, check out my online course, Kidney Stone Nutrition School. VIP enrollment includes help directly from me. I can't wait to see you there and help you prevent kidney stones. Have a great day.